That was a little fast.
Yeah, I would've made the
Next
girls
up on the
start all over
agenda is citizens' comment. I don't have any citizens here, just one. Anybody on Zoom? Have any comments to make?
Danielle here. I just wanted to let everybody know I'm on Zoom.
Yeah, I see you. We have one Board of Ed member on Zoom. We're expecting Tom to arrive shortly. Nikki has joined us of another Board of Finance member. We have two Board of Finance members and Brian, is that Brian? Maybe you have Board of Finance, Brian Lynch?
Yep, that's me.
Okay, Brian, we have three Board of Finance members with us tonight. Thank you. Okay. All right, hearing no citizens' comments. We have any educational updates?
No, not at this time. Chairman Herbert.
Melinda, any educational updates for us?
Not at this time.
Okay, so. What is tonight's purpose?
So the focus this evening is to look at some of the directors' budgets. We looked at special ed last week. And Bill Birch is here for facilities and Heather is here for technology. Michelle is online for human resources. And that's what we're planning on looking at this evening. Plus, Bill did make some of those adjustments. You got that in your update on Friday. But he may want to review those as well. So I'm going to turn it to Bill, I guess, at this point, Kathleen, unless you want to.
All right,
On something.
well, let's, I do see that we do have, an updated, we do have the object code descriptions. Is that what you were looking for, Jess and Heather? Is that fit your needs?
Yeah, so we were talking to Bill just before the meeting started and I think they're thorough enough for what I think we're looking for, unless Jess disagrees. But what I think is that, what Bill was saying, instead of having them separated and having to cross-reference, once it comes up to the town meeting sort of schedule of time frame, that there be a little bit of an easier navigation to get to the object codes, whether it be by hyperlink or whatever in the final document that is presented to the town and put on the town website and the school website.
Okay.
Yep. I agree.
Okay, and he more or less answered my question and Steve's question on the disparity between the budgets on the pupil services. Paris.
Yes. We went through that exercise.
Yeah, and we do have a schedule on the professional analysis of what makes up the budget for paraprofessionals in the FY25 budget. And again, we have a recap of the incremental change from 24 to 25, the major players of that. That's why I wanted the object code, because I do want to see what actual salary is. I'll total that up and see what our actual salaries are. Because that's the major component of our budget is salaries. So I can take that object code and add that up.
Right, you can actually, there's a single, or teacher.
It's not one single object code, but they're all there together.
Right,
So I'll just run it up on an Excel
Yeah.
spreadsheet.
great.
Okay, thank you. All right, since Bill Birch is here and Heather is tethered for the whole meeting, we'll start with Bill and go over to plant. and have him explain his budget in a little more detail than we did. Most interesting would be well, you've got in here $8,000 to replace equipment, and that's going to be what? That's line item, if you're looking at it, that's groundskeeper, replace equipment, line 299.
So that would be either a sander or a snowplow.
Sander or a snowplow.
So we have a need for both,
Mm-hmm.
and, at the end of this season, we'll decide which one we need more.
Okay. 2.5%, that's okay, repair and maintenance. Okay, your repair and maintenance is going up 11.5%.
And is that building repair and maintenance?
Yeah.
50431?
Yes, do you have a schedule on that?
Yep.
Okay.
So first of all, when we look at this, we have deferred all painting
Mm-hmm.
within the facility, so the high school hallways and lockers have been, are going to be on the town budget, on the capital budget, as they were last year. The painting that we normally do within the building, classrooms, hallways, common areas and that, we deferred it last year for budgetary reasons, and we've done the same this year. We look at, playground repairs. So last year we had a number of $57,395 to repair the existing playground. We couldn't do that last year. And this year we are hoping that there's gonna be a new playground. At which point, once that is in place and the structure is open and being used, then we can evaluate. Is it worth putting that money into the old playground, which is 40-some years old now at this point? Or is it better off to let it go? So that's also been deferred. Beyond that, when you look at it, all I can tell you is that there is, we have to buy a new hot water heater in the high school at a cost of $8,500. So there are 2 hot water heaters for the high school. At the end of the year last year, unfortunately, they both failed. We managed to put one in. And now this one is in the budget for this coming year. And we also need to buy a hot water booster for the culinary arts program at a cost of about $4,300. That water is just not quite warm enough down there. And I could say that oil is down.
For now.
Oh, we're locked in.
Oh, yes. So. Said we lost 2 water heaters. You replaced one. What are we doing about the other one that you want to replace? If it's
So we replaced one.
right,
And
right.
one is, so Matt, they're all throughout the complex, they're all redundant systems.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, there's, it's like Noah's Ark, it's
Yeah,
full of everything.
No, that's a
And,
great answer. That's
and with one brand new water heater in place,
wasn't a big deal for a year.
not as long as it fires every day. But, new things break too, but we were confident that we could get through this year with the single water heater.
Yep.
And then as we got into the next budget, we put it aside.
So for our next budget meeting, could we have that schedule, please? Thank you. We give that schedule to Danielle, so that all the Board of Ed members could have that as a backup. Well, we will put an appendix or to the budget that finally goes to the Board of Finance, as we did last year. With all the backup information.
And Bill, Kathleen, can I ask Bill a question?
Sure.
So you had said that, several painting jobs and things have been deferred for several years now. Some of the things that are often criticized of the Board of Ed is that, we don't allocate funds for maintenance and things that are let go and da, 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 da. But the reality is that we often are trying to pick and choose what we feel the town can stomach in terms of what the budget includes. And so what is the deferred painting? I know you said the playground, repairing the old one has been deferred. What was the scope of painting that was put off again?
So just to put it in perspective.
Yeah.
But this is, going into my 21st year here. And from year one, I put painting in the budget every year. And we didn't actually stop painting this building, I would say, until Melinda got here 7 years ago.
What?
So yes, there was a lot of painting deferred.
Embarrassing.
For many, many years, painting has been deferred. I guess it comes down to when you get to this time of year, when you're starting to look at budgets. Well, we can't do anything about the oil. We can't do anything about the electricity. We absolutely have to keep the boilers running. Could you get away without replacing a carpet or painting or changing ceiling tiles that are just plain old? And those are the kinds of things that get put aside. So as far as specific projects, Heather, we didn't have any lined up.
Okay.
Normally what we do is we put the funds in place.
Yeah.
For painting X number of dollars.
Yeah.
I try to base that on giving each school 3 classrooms a year. Sometimes we don't do classrooms, we decide that we're gonna do the hallways. But the idea was to try to get it on a rotating schedule so that we didn't have any areas that hadn't had a coat of paint in 30 years or so.
Bill, I have a question. So when we put in for the lockers to be redone, did we include the hallway painting around those lockers?
So there were 2 separate numbers. So the number for the hallways was $31,500, and that was to paint all of the hallways in the high school so that they would match, or at least the colors would flow in some way. And it was 18,900 to paint the lots. No, 18,900 to paint the lots.
So you put those both on the town side.
Those are both on the town side,
Okay,
as they were last year.
So some painting will be done next year, if that gets passed on the town
If
side.
that gets passed.
We're just doing. I got a quick question.
Hey, I'm looking at. What? Okay.
Just ask the
one
question.
Is there anything in there for the girls' middle school locker room? Because there does appear to be something going on with the ceiling, and then the flooring looks like it's coming up in chunks.
Not at this point.
Okay.
But I could say those locker rooms were done within 5 years, I think.
Okay,
Yeah,
And if there's something going on with those ceilings, nobody said anything to me about it.
Okay.
That's
I got
the
a
first I've heard of it.
photo from Kids Night Out that before you go into the bathroom, there's something going on with the ceiling in there.
That's middle school.
Mm-hmm.
Can we look at line? 287, custodian salary. We have it going up budget to budget by $35,000, which is a 7.8% increase. But projected spending, it's going down by $93,000.
I can answer,
Huh?
and actually, all permits seized on the same irregularity at the same time. You guys are quite a team. If you go a few lines down,
Okay, there's
295, 4, 5, and 6, there, it looks like in the actual column,
Uh-huh,
column M,
yeah,
it looks like custodial overtime and the like is being coded on an actual basis to the custodial salary line.
okay,
So that's why you're high in line 287.
okay,
And you're very low in 290. What is that, 4, 5, and 6, maybe? Gotta get my. So that if you were to kind of mesh those together, that would even out.
okay, well, that's the explanation for
Yeah.
that. But still, the salary is going up from budget to budget by 7.8%. That's kind of high.
And I think that's a combination of normal raises, which I think we put in at 3%. And maybe perhaps slightly higher head count from year to year. Compared to what we budgeted.
There wouldn't be a higher head count on custodian salary.
It's the same number.
Did we reclass someone as a mechanic or something? No, no, that wouldn't be there because that would be in a different.
I can go into. I can take that as a question for next time and
Okay.
do a
you
similar
know, 'cause
analysis.
that's more than the
comparison.
bargaining, we negotiated.
Kathleen?
Yep, yes,
My apologies for being late today. Bill, can we try to do like what we did with some of the other salaries and put it in parentheses somewhere, how many salaries that covers? Please.
Yep.
I think I saw it under your object code though, no? Yeah,
But so if you go to the object code,
yeah, if you go to the object code page, which is in the back there.
it's 50116.
All the salaries are together, except add them up. 501. All the salaries start with 501.
Yeah, it's
so it's
50116.
13 custodians, 2 maintenance mechanics, and 2 groundskeepers.
Well, you're the best. See? You know, all I needed was to ask a question.
Yeah, so what we had talked about before, Justin, is that all these object codes reference now to the main budget, and a lot of times, especially when it comes to salaries, it lists the number of folks that are in that pool of money. And that the goal is that these descriptions will be linked by the time it's going to town meeting. So it'll be a quick, click on something to find the detail.
Thank you.
Because if I look at the groundskeeper's salary, he's going up, or she, he, whoever, 2.4%, which is in the ballpark of what we had agreed upon.
So I'll break down that. So
Yeah. Fuel is going down, which is great. Heating oil's going down. And, keeping the fuel, gasoline flat.
I'm sorry, which line?
That's line 312.
So I believe we got a little better price on gasoline this year than we did last year.
Okay, but it's such an insignificant number,
Yeah,
we're
it's a
not gonna
small-
worry about it.
And then too, you have to remember, gasoline, just like many other things, is very weather dependent.
No, that makes sense.
Wait a second. No, sorry. Kathleen, I have one when Bill's done.
Okay, Justin has one.
I have one when Bill's done.
Go right ahead, Joe.
The sewer and water, I assume that ties back to the whole, and this, I apologize, this question's already been asked. The
Based on the
WPCA increase,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes, Tom.
What do we, or where did we put the, forward thinking in case we lose a boiler? Is there any contingency fund in this? Or a rainy day or anything?
And we're hoping is gonna address some of that, isn't it, Bill?
So if the HVAC grant goes through.
Yeah.
That will include 2 boilers for this building for the middle school.
Okay.
I would not expect to see them until the summer of 25 before the installation actually takes place.
But God forbid, if, say one went down or 2 went down. This. Whatever budget cycle it would be. We wouldn't have anything on hand anyways until 2025.
We have nothing on.
Yes, we do. We have about 40,000 in the non-lapsing account.
Can we use that for this or is that earmarked?
We could use that in the talk.
Use 60,000 out of that account to replace the last 2 boilers. Okay.
So we kind of have a quasi contingency.
Exactly.
Not much.
And just
Much.
Contingency.
Right.
No.
since we're on, if I could, Kathleen, since we're on the topic of contingency, you may recall that the board put, I believe it was 30,000 in contingency. That I'm sure will come up in another flux explanation later down the line. We did not do that this year. Just based on the severity of the cuts last year and just looking at things this year, we had other priorities. Everything was kind of spoken.
But we're riding from now until June 30th. Kind of
We've already.
fingers
used-
crossed.
So we had 30,000 in contingency in the 2024 budget. I think it's fair to say that we've already used that essentially to help cover some of the para
Correct.
related expenditure.
Because we remember we reduced the budget by so many paras,
Right.
and then we had to increase paras based on the needs of students this year. So that's where that fluctuation came in the para line.
My concern is, because we compare budget to budget for the Board of Finance. That's what we give the budget, that's what we give to the Board of Finance, the increase from budget to budget, that's where that 967
Correct.
Correct.
and that's what they base it on. Do we need to count those that we hired during the year as, and that are now in the 25 budget as an increase in headcount?
Yes,
Yes. and
Which
there
we
is-
didn't, because we're only hiring, we only said 2 new paras in the kindergarten.
but you
No.
accounted for that.
if I could quickly go to the para analysis.
Well, on this,
So if you, the sheet that's on the screen, Kathleen, I don't know if you saw that in your packet.
yeah, I
This-
got that, and that's where I counted, we have 10. But there are not 10 paras in our 24 budget for pupil services.
This budget actually has 24 paras in it.
But no, I'm looking just at pupil service.
So I have to parse
But in
that
our
out.
24 budget, there's not money for 24 paras.
Yes, there is, in the different lines that are outlined on this sheet.
Okay,
You can see in column A, you can see the accounts.
yeah,
Some of them are in, for example, that top item right here is middle school general para. So that wouldn't hit the pupil services budget. It would hit the middle
No.
school budget.
But that would mean there should be 22 paras, correct? Because we're adding 2 for next
I'll
year.
have to go back and.
There are 24 on this
We
list.
have 22
I understand
now.
that.
We're adding 2.
Okay.
These 2 that are highlighted right now.
I
Yep,
see
Yep,
those, yeah.
understood. That's what I
So
wanna
that gets us to the 24. So all of the current paras plus the 2 new additions are built into the 2025 budget.
Correct, but in our 24 budget, we didn't have money for 24
Correct.
paras. So I'm saying that yes, there is money for the 2 new paras for the kindergarten.
Yep.
But we also need to have an incremental FTE for the additional paras that are not in the 24 budget, but we have now in the 25 budget. Because even though they're on the payroll for
Yes.
24.
Yep.
They were not in the budget,
correct?
and they are being compared to the 25 budget.
Right, which explains the variance.
Right,
So we are budgeting for them in 25, but we didn't
Correct.
budget for them in 24.
but we're saying this is the increase in salary, but it's showing as like an 8%, 9%.
Right,
And that doesn't reconcile with what we negotiated as a salary increase, because we hired people during the year that were not in the budget.
right, and that's the explanation for the variance.
Correct.
Right. I
So
don't think
there
we-
are some FTE increases.
Right, so I see what you're saying. To
Yes.
say it's all contractual salary is not true. It's all salary
Right.
coming from two main sources, the contractual increase and the increased headcount from budget. to
Right.
budget.
And I think that needs to be explained to the board of finance. Because we needed to hire those people mainly for pupil services. Because we didn't hire them in the kindergarten. We're saying we're going to hire new people for the kindergarten in this budget, but we also had to hire people in 24 for pupil services, because we're required to do that.
So Kathleen,
Yes,
so this budget right now, and maybe this is you and Bill, but what does this budget represent for headcount? Additional headcount? 2 paras and what else so far?
people we hired in 24 for pupil services.
But were those paid by grants though?
No,
None of them. So what's the total?
Depends
Additional,
what you're comparing to. Tom. The 2024 budget
Yeah.
had, well, I would have to go back and look as to how many we actually budgeted, because that's
Probably down there.
unfortunately where those cuts, and we were
Yeah.
discussing this
Right.
before you came.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those cuts took a big chunk out of the 2024 budget.
Right.
Because we cut quite a few paras from the budget. Student needs required that we keep those positions filled in actual. So if you're looking actual to actual, the only new are the 2 new kindergarten paras.
Correct.
If you're looking budget 25 to budget 24, it's probably closer to
Or-
7 or 8.
Yeah,
those
it
those are
could be-
replacements.
So those positions we reduced out of the budget when we had to balance the budget last year, but since that date, these 6 or 7 students, they either moved in, their IEP required it, and so we had to hire those folks to meet the needs of the students. So that put the number back up, but we assumed that number. We went through those paras and those students with Chris. And we are projecting ahead for next year, and those students are still gonna need those paras. Unless, of course, somebody moves
Well,
out.
I'm not saying that we should take them out.
No,
We need to account for. it.
Correct.
But-
I understand where you're coming from, Kathleen.
But Kathleen, are those direct? Is it direct money or is any of that grant funded or
None of it's
reimbursable?
real fun.
That's
None
direct
of it.
money that we.
Yeah, so I think what Tom's trying to ask, did we rob Peter to pay Paul?
Right.
Like, where did the money come, if we had to hire 7 paras in,
Do it all the
Where'd it
time.
come from?
and I get that, but
It wasn't budget.
so it all came from that contingency, or it had to come from somewhere?
It consumed the contingency. We are, as of right now, we have a wide variety of other departments and accounts that are currently running under budget that offset the overage in paras. That's why we're still projecting at the moment, we are projecting to come in just under budget.
So we've had fiscal responsibility,
Well, we're certainly trying.
we'll use a fun word, we've had fiscal responsibility. That has led us to be able to make it work, if you will, from our last meeting prior. On the para side and having those 7, because I see what Tom's saying, right? Where did the 7 come, where did the money for the 7 come from? It had to come from somewhere.
I mean, this and many other examples, we could
We
probably come
froze
up
the
with a
budget.
huge list. Are the primary reasons why Melinda closes the budget and
Froze the
in
budget.
October. Very often, so that any discretionary spending that really hasn't been needed to get the school off the ground at the beginning of the year. Is kind of nipped in the bud to try to cover, because unfortunately, you just don't know. The needs of the kids evolve. I mean, Chris sits across the hall from me. It's on a daily basis.
But discretionary, I don't know that discretionary is necessarily the right word, and
Yeah.
it's not
No.
one that I would describe the
No,
situation.
no, it's not. It's not.
It came from somewhere
Somewhere else.
and had to go somewhere else. We saw it in, the NIAC presentation a couple months ago,
Well,
right?
for
It-
Yeah, but for example, Bill had 2 hot water heaters break. We could only replace one, so we have. We're down a hot water heater.
And sorry, one more
No,
thing,
go
Matt.
ahead.
I think that's the kind of stuff.
Mhm.
That we need to make sure we highlight in our presentation to the Board of Finance, to understand that, yes, we're making it work. We're kicking that proverbial can down the road for some things
Oh, sure.
to provide for the students. But eventually, it's gonna catch up to us,
It has been for years and years and years.
but eventually.
Bill, can you give an example, like one of the larger things where we're robbing Peter to pay Paul on the paras? I mean, I'm sure there's lots of little things, lots of little things, but is there one like larger thing that?
Yes. Legals, we're running over in legals this year, right? We had contracts to negotiate,
Yep.
and so we moved some money that we were pretty sure that we're gonna have, money in severance. And so that pot of money will cover the overages in legals. And usually by the end of the school year or sometime in the spring, Bill does those budget transfers for those
Yeah.
for those big, budget movements that
It
have to
happens all the
happen.
time and
But legal is one I know because that's one I manage. And we're over in legals because of all of the contract negotiations that we had this year. Mediation, expulsion, all of that cost money.
Kim.
Kristen, I have a question that kind of
Kristen.
relates to, sorry, it's okay.
Well, start with a K.
That kind of goes along with this, for object 50104. So when you have 7 teacher salaries that are grant funded, what is, like, when do those run out and what's the plan for, they're gonna be in the budget in the future, or what is this?
So the federal grants are usually a standard allocation that you get every year. Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV, and then IDA 611 and 617, right?
619,
19.
is that right?
Anyway, so we usually get an allocation. They have been stable over time, especially here. Last year, we got a small bump up in Title I and IDA, very small. So we're pretty confident
So they're just
that
gonna keep getting paid.
what's in the
from-
grant, and we just went through this when we did the exercise for the paras to make sure there weren't any paras on the grants that we were messing up, right? But they were all pretty accurate, so those are pretty standard every year. I can almost bank on what we're gonna have in Title I and those other federal
I
grants.
just wasn't sure if next budget you were gonna have like 7 new salaries, or if those are pretty consistently covered by grants.
So we are taking a hard look at those grants right now, and that's why a couple of the positions, certainly Alliance is one of them. A couple of those new positions that the principals moved forward, we felt like we could take a harder look at some of those grants and keep our fingers crossed that there's an allocation increase. So that we can cover those positions and not put them on the BOE side.
So
But hadn't we have those grants,
Yeah, that's.
we would be in trouble. Yes.
So even though we're over on legal, that could have been much worse because we do have a reduced
Absolutely.
rate with our law firm
That's
compared to
right.
what we had. The second thing is, Bill, on the last page.
Yeah.
There's a reduction in severance, unemployment and longevity. Is that,
Those were calculated, Melinda and I met on those, we talked through, we took a look at our historical spending in those 3 lines, because we're trying to, to bring some discipline to this process. And we felt like there was a little bit of room to trim in each of those lines. The problem there is,
We don't know.
my crystal ball works as well as yours.
so that's what I was just gonna say, this is our best guess at anybody that's retiring. Payouts, whatever it might be. And then I know we've talked about possibility of negotiating for some of those that have higher payouts. if there's a way that we can amortize it across 3 years, something,
We've straddled a couple of years with some of those payouts.
okay.
And usually we don't have that big liability, that big liability and,
We had a couple years ago,
banked vacation time caused a lot of that with the, administrators.
Correct.
And some of the other folks that were banking vacation time, and then when they retired, that was a big number, remember?
Yep.
And so we took care of that through negotiations, and so therefore, a lot of those days can't carry over, so we don't have that big payout. I think the last we had was a few years ago, and we actually straddled that over 2 years.
Yep. okay, so this is our, right now, best guess.
Yep.
And we usually don't hear of this until almost too late. Okay.
Sorry.
I think just.
Do we know what that total exposure could be in a worst case scenario?
We definitely could get at it, yes. It's not something that I have at my fingertips right now.
But to your point, we have a pretty good bubble at some point, I think.
Yeah, I'd like to. I don't think it's priority, but I'd like to understand the total exposure on those lines. Cause that could,
That's probably not a bad thing to ask every year, like, where are we at? Potential, how many could retire?
I know of one.
But moving forward, it's probably not a bad, potentially you might have 3 this year, 4, whatever.
I mean, even if it's a range, right, we could have anywhere from 1 to 5 this year could be in our total exposure for retirement.
So if it's a certified teacher, they should have already given me their letter, so that they can get those,
true.
retirement benefits.
Yep.
And I've only received one.
And that's not a guarantee, that's a potential. or is-
Correct. But I mean, they can forfeit some of those other benefits if they don't give me the letter by a certain date. I did receive one, and people have retired after that date.
Right,
I haven't heard of any other retirements coming forward, but there could be a potential one more.
But to Tom's point, next year, right, what is the number of teachers that we have that are on that cusp of retiring that could potentially throw us a letter next year, right? Could throw you the letter next year, and then we're looking at X. That's what I'm worried about. It's great that we can work past that to an extent.
So severance is always a year behind also. So severance gets paid out the following year, correct?
So if 10 people retired in this 2025 budget that we're discussing, if 10 people retired next
It wouldn't hit
January, it wouldn't hit until the 26th, so we can
Okay.
budget and say, hey, we had 10 people retire, it's gonna cost us $2 million in retirement payments.
Yes.
But we have to budget it almost as like a fuel where we just have to do it. Okay,
And I think the sooner we understand that as a board
yes.
and what that potential exposure year over year is gonna be, the better off we're gonna be, because that seems like one of those. I'm almost as as much as I'm worried about a boiler going, that could be as bad or worse.
Yeah, if we keep underpaying everybody, everybody's gonna wanna retire.
Right.
Or not to bash anybody's dedication to teaching, but
But God forbid something happen again where, teachers are unhappy with the situation.
Yeah.
Like the COVID pandemic, I'm not saying that I ever want one of those again, but God forbid something like that ever happen again and teachers decide it ain't worth it. Just like police officers have, they've said it's not worth it, and then we're on the hook for, even if it's next year, or the year after, that's a big number to hit, so. I'd like to understand that sooner. Rather than- Sorry.
Unemployment's the only number we just don't know.
Mhm.
And that's of it, just a fluid number depending upon what happens with budget. Or other circumstances.
Any more questions for Bill Burke? No? Okay, then we'll move on to technology. Okay.
For the most part, except for hardware, most of what is in my budget is the same. As last year, with a few slight increases. I have district-wide software that's in my budget, which includes a lot of the software used in the classrooms throughout. It also includes a lot of the administrative software programs that we're using. But for the most part, like I said, you'll see we put the Chromebooks back in. I put 100 Chromebooks. We have around, I'd say 500 Chromebooks that are going to be end of life in 2029, which is why I highly recommend if we can replace 100 each year. And as I said at the last meeting, it's really important, because once they're end of life, they won't receive updates and students won't be able to use them for speed testing and other curriculum resources that we have here. The 50 laptops include staff and student. Our high school students do have laptops so that they can use some of their higher functioning software programs like Microsoft Office and AutoCAD and Photoshop software. And then 20 network access points, which is a continuation of my project each year. To just keep replenishing our Wi-Fi access points as Wi-Fi gets updated each year. A lot of our older access points, they'll eventually be probably integrated. So it's important to keep those on a cycle as well. And then 2 network switches. A few years back, we were able to, with E-rate, replace and rewire our entire network. So it's kind of time to start. I think that was about 5 years ago. So it's time that we slowly budget for at least 2 a year.
You want to explain E-rate and how that works, Heather?
Yeah, so E-rate, we're basically right now, I think we're at a 60% reimbursement. So this the E-rate grant pays for 60% of the Wi-Fi access point and the network switches. So then we only end up owing 40% of that cost, which is really great. And I believe I have about 17,000 to spend. And it should be the last year, but then hopefully they will continue replenishing that for another 3-year phase. Hopefully that will continue and I'll be happy.
So the 99,000, that's the replacement of the Chromebooks, correct?
Yep, Chromebooks, laptops, and the infrastructure.
Are there any credits, like when so the ones that come out of circulation? Do we sell those?
No.
Do we get any monies back anywhere? Like,
No,
kind of like a core charge on a battery?
prices.
Yep.
When we replace them, we usually take all the good ones, give them to the elementary students, so we do.
Well, that's right, we do the recycling that way.
Ones we piece together and just use for parts and repairs.
Okay, but there's no,
They're pretty much, they're anywhere from $250 to $300, so they're just
Yeah.
disposable.
Yeah.
If we're not getting, if we're missing out on $20.
I just didn't know if there's a core charge, $50 is $50.
Elementary carries it from kindergarten to first grade, and then they're cycled.
They get a new one once they get to 5th grade.
It's almost like you wish you could sell them to a wholesaler that, pieces them out,
But again, the problem, Tom, is the software is no good on them.
I'm just thinking like the batteries, lithium batteries or anything else inside or whatever, but that's more work than probably what it's worth.
Yep. And these, I assume that these are all for the touchscreen latest and greatest.
No, I didn't ask for touchscreen, because those are about $50 more per device. So they're non-touch. But they do have the extended warranty for the like accidental damage or spills and drops.
When we bought the touch screens for the younger grades, did the teachers not like them?
They did like them, but I just think overall. Since we're not really one-to-one in preschool and kindergarten anymore.
Right.
The first grade, for the most part, they've been okay with the regular Chromebooks and using the trackpad.
I live and breathe by my touchscreen now, so. I don't know if you'd have to fight me to go back to my trackpad.
The lower grades do still have the touchscreen, but once they get to 5th grade, we're gonna unfortunately be circulating the non-touch down.
It's okay, they can rough it for a few years.
Kathleen, can I ask a question? So I know, Justin had asked at the last meeting if there could be like a schedule or something of the rolling replacements. And so should we assume that like every year there'll be 50 and 100, or is this a heavy year? And just so that we can kind of forecast crystal ball, like you were saying, to kind of see what the,
I think we should plan for 100 for Chromebook every year. The laptops might be a little bit heavy, but again, I haven't really been able to purchase and replenish student laptops in a couple years. So I'd say at least, I don't know, I'm trying to think of the class sizes, so maybe we should really stick with 50 of the laptops. And I know, like right now, we're running dangerously low of any spare devices, which is another issue too.
That 50 is for 9th grade, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some for staff, for teachers as well.
If you think back to 4 years ago, whole high school got all brand new laptops during that COVID grant. And so, what was it, the Janus grant that gave all those laptops? So we got the whole school outfitted with new laptops, and now it's starting to replace those.
I'm gonna ask the question only because I know corporations do it all the time. Have we looked at any lease programs?
I do have a few quotes with that, yes.
Okay.
Don't know if that's an option that we'd be interested in, but, yeah, I've looked at like a 3-year lease term.
Yep.
The only thing with that, I feel like we probably want to go with more, like 200 or 300 Chromebooks at once.
Mhm.
And then pay that, and then, we're just kind of stuck paying that for years.
I just feel that the lease, so. Couple of concerns with buying them is eventually we're gonna end up with a closet full of Chromebooks. That we're gonna have to deal with. If you lease them and something goes wrong with it, they're required to send you, a lot of leasing companies required to send you that replacement. An overnight kind of thing. They own the hardware side, if you will. We still own the software side. It's something that I would like to, if from an order of magnitude, explore and understand. Right, there's a reason why corporations are not buying hardware anymore, they're leasing it. I'd like to understand whether it makes sense for us as a district to be doing it as well.
I do know there's some logistical, I know in my former district, we looked into the option of leasing, and there was something on the town side that had to happen because the lease had to go through the town. That tripped us up, I remember. So I don't know if Connecticut and Thompson has that same issue, but because the lease had to go through the town, it did trip us up. We ended up not leasing, but we did explore the lease because it did give us options to get infusion of a lot of new hardware at one time. So
What is our disposal policy?
So we have a company that comes in and recycles for us. So once or twice a year, we go through what we have, we figure out, okay, what can we salvage, what can't we salvage, and they come in for free and take everything away
Right, so they take it away for free, Tom, and we don't have to pay
for
for the
them.
disposal, and then they get to harvest the
Right.
parts, which is the $20 that you wanted.
It's
It's never gonna be 50, but
So I asked this last year, and I think we didn't know what to do with it, or we decided it wasn't gonna work for last year, but I'm just gonna bring it up again this year. So I think it was Mrs. Morrison had mentioned that the school, Brooklyn Public Schools charges a lease to the student to
Correct.
utilize the Chromebook or the laptop for the school year. So there's a charge to the student to utilize the laptop or Chromebook for the year, which then you have to renew your lease next year to utilize. Now, of course, if they damage it, they still have to pay for your damages and everything. The lease is just for access to bring it home and all of that sort of stuff. Now, I know that because of the economic climate in the town, we do know folks that are on the free or reduced lunches, because we know that data. People on the free and reduced lunch program could have either a free or reduced lease. And those that are not on the free and reduced lunch program should be able to pay the $25 or whatever the heck it is that we charge per year. And that could maybe offset some of the technology budget. I don't know, just a thought.
I'm wondering if it would have a big impact, since we're up near what, 46-47% poverty, so half of them would be free anyway. And then we have to have a conversation about equitable access to the curriculum. And if that's a device we believe students need to access the curriculum with, then isn't that a resource that the BOE should be providing? So I guess
don't
that's a
disagree with that.
philosophical
Yeah.
discussion.
Just a
I'm just
thought.
curious just how Brooklyn kind of formulates that and how they kind of do it, because maybe they've figured out something, you know?
It's a different community. Their poverty isn't as high. Obviously, they're not a Title I district. We are.
Yeah.
I mean, we can certainly look into charging. I just worry about students having equal access to the curriculum.
So my thought on that, and I think it's a good idea on one hand, but my thought on that is everybody needs to have access to the same kind of computer. I can't bring in my computer from home, say, well, my parents already got me a computer, don't charge me for this. And we don't charge kids to use textbooks, so it's
No,
basically,
no,
it
fair,
is
yeah.
the foundation right now. So it's a great idea to recover some money, but if it's only half the people.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if we get into a pickle, we'll keep it in our back pocket, you know, budget wise.
We might have to go there.
Yeah, right.
We have to go there.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, just have a discussion with.
Kathleen, a
It's-
quick math on that for 400 students. If we're gonna go about 50% are in poverty and we charge 25 student, we're looking at 10 grand. That doesn't offset.
Right.
Much.
Right. No, good. Well,
Yeah,
Hey, at this point, every little bit helps.
Yes.
I know, but
Kathleen,
Yes.
Bill, object code 50107, the technician salary line. And then there's the one just below it, 50121, technician substitute salary. That's made up of 4, the director, and then 3. And then that line, if I'm not mistaken, we're also handling tech services for the town, correct?
Yeah.
So I think that has to also be made points at some point in time during the budgetary process. And Heather, I think you had provided last year the number of support, help services, calls or whatever that your department handles. I think that's all supporting data, because if I remember, it was staggering. Yeah, so again, things like that is what's gonna help sell this again, because you have a condensed staff, but you're servicing, 1,000 users here, right? And I don't know however many with town, but I think it's good to call that out. But then you look at the number of support tickets, whether it's daily, monthly, quarterly, I think that's where it really comes in. Okay. So any of that supporting data.
Does the town put in tickets as well? They do. So you have that report.
So you could add that to the 50107 object code definition.
Right.
Hmm.
And Bill, the only other thing was the healthcare line. The negative 12,000
Which, where are you?
on technology, which is
Three, three,
line,
five.
Yes, I actually, Heather and I discussed that very item.
is that right?
It is right. No one, believe it or not, in the tech department currently uses our benefits.
Yeah, down
Good for
12,000.
them. Gold star, no.
That's all we can afford to give them is a gold star.
That's true.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody else have any questions for Heather? Or are we?
I got one, and it could just be, is there a particular reason why we're using so many outside technology services? Cause if you do those two lines together, we're at about $207,000.
Isn't that the licenses?
Is that? Okay,
Our firewall, our Microsoft licenses.
That's per user or?
Yeah.
It is.
If I could, Kathleen, sometimes, especially I notice when putting together the object look. The names of the objects may not be perfect because you've got a bunch of different things that flow into one. So in
Mhm.
some instances, the object code might not be perfectly descriptive.
So that, I mean. Line 342, line 346, sorry,
yeah, go ahead.
342, line 347 are hard costs. Depending on the number of students, right? That's not a number that we're gonna be able to potentially rob from Peter to pay Paul,
Right.
Like electricity.
right?
Yeah.
Oil.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Since I can't see her on the screen because we're seeing Danielle. Do you have any questions? No. Okay.
Sorry, I have one more. We did see a slight reduction in 347. Is that due to? Less students, less teachers,
I have
less,
a couple of things that I wanna hit in district one.
Kathleen, he had asked a
Justin.
question on.
Oh, I forget.
Well,
One more.
did you ask for dues and fees, that one?
347,
347.
There's a reduction of a,
so a reduction of 2.8%, it's like $3,000.
We eliminated an assessment program. We dropped NEWA. This year, we're using interim assessments that are free from the state. So we did drop that particular item.
Does this include if we decide to continue that, I wanna call it a pulse survey, but it's not like the survey that we just did that you paid for with a grant?
Yes, that's actually in Michelle's budget, was coming up next. She did put that in her budget.
That's in Michelle's budget.
Correct.
Okay.
Where is Michelle's budget?
It is under.
I'm sorry, I'm done.
There's-
All excellent questions, Justin.
Bill,
Why we're here.
I said I had to make up for being late, man.
can you point us to where Michelle?
Cause I see her. And that was one of my questions.
22422. Go ahead.
She has a very small ask this year. She had a munis ask. She had a professional development ask, however, we did take that out because we got the platform through
Line 244.
Thank you.
Panorama and another one for Paris. So
She's got travel, office supplies, I see that.
So
My major question on her. Was the increase, is that's an allocation increase?
Yeah, I can handle that one.
yeah,
Kathleen.
Okay,
So
well, she's on, oh, yeah, all right.
if you look at Michelle's salary, in
Mhm.
the prior year, it appears that we budgeted at 50% of her salary.
Yeah,
And she is actually split 70-30 count to
70,
school.
30, okay,
So
that makes
the
sense.
2025 budget
Okay.
reflects that 70%. The only thing I can think of is that when I did the budget last year, I split both Michelle and myself 50-50. I am 50-50.
Yeah.
But Michelle's 70-30.
That's what I figured, but you know, okay, so she's got a cell phone that's 50, whatever it is. So now all her things are split that way?
The only thing we split is Sal.
Sal.
Carrier benefits, and then her cell phone is also owned by the BOE.
Okay.
Doing a good job on office supplies. Well done.
Yeah, can you cut down on your travel? Well, that's
It's a conference in Aruba, right?
for 110
110 bucks, sign me up.
Although I don't really have any other questions on that. To me, it looked like it was just an allocation.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah, okay, no problem there.
Is it gonna stay consistent?
My
70,
next
30?
question is
Yeah, I
the
would
adult
think so.
education assessment, line 241. We spent an actual of 80, almost 86,000 this year, yet we're
42.
going back down to 54,000?
No, there's an allocation that comes from the state that covers a portion of that.
That's a grant allocation that we get.
And I think what you're seeing in the actual line, Kathleen, is I haven't booked that allocation yet to the current year. spending. So in essence, some of those will be shifted. It's similar to shifting it to a grant,
All right.
which will bring that in line. That column M, the projected line is. You're sort of, you're really making your best educated guess. Based on where things are in the current year, and that's one example where we just simply hadn't booked that yet.
Okay.
When we actually put this out for the public bill, is that projected spend line there? Because that can be confusing to folks if
We-
it keeps moving.
We can decide, you can decide as a board. I don't think we did last year for that very reason. I think the public facing is typically budget to budget. Because that's it, as you can see, it gets cumbersome.
Yeah.
Sometimes some individuals even like a 2023 actual. Not that I'm suggesting that. 'cause we're out of room.
And the
But it
same with
gets
line,
very
okay. The same with line 249. You want to look at that one? You're projecting a $29,000 decrease in the business office secretary.
250.
I don't know why that.
I'll have to check that one because I know that the salary there is two individuals in the finance office.
Yeah, they're going from 132, where there are two people, that's represents one and a
Yes.
half people, down to 103.
Nothing's changing. there.
No, nothing's changing.
It looks like the finance department.
That doesn't, it should show an
Tighten the
increase.
belt.
Gold star.
Go what we can.
might be a coding issue. Don't give them all the credit here.
Hey,
Hey.
Oops.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you're making somebody part-time, I don't know.
no, definitely not. Oh, no.
Anything, I would have expected that the other.
Well, check that one then.
You know what? It's a good lead by example, Bill. Well done. Tough crowd. Tip the waitress. I'll be here all week.
Kathleen,
Yes, Jess.
just a refresher on the magnet school and middle college tuition. My understanding is we no longer have a sending agreement with middle college, is that correct?
But we do have to pay the tuition.
We still have to pay the tuition, we just don't have to provide transportation. So if we no longer have a sending agreement, we still have to pay tuition.
Correct.
Okay.
The school of choice.
And that reflects, we had looked at the expected folks, and that's what
Okay.
expected students. That's what.
In the same as we do with VOAG, we're reviewing what they're taking at middle college, and it's not
You know,
comparable
I-
to what we offer here.
So the difference between that is they fall under school choice. Their programming is different. We only have a few kids there anyway. I don't pull transcripts there. It's not a big tuition number.
Mhm.
I pull the transcripts for BOAG because obviously
That's a big tuition.
we have those issues with BOAG.
So if a kid is not taking agriculture classes to be VOAG, then
I'm trying to dig and just ask that same question. So the issue is that they can take an exploratory their first year, and then they have to take at least one VOAG class per semester. When you pull the transcripts on students, you will see that they take one VOAG class per semester. My issue is that those VOAG classes are not a career VOAG pathway like we have at the high school. If you're gonna take, I don't know, the medical pathway, there's certain classes you must take
Right.
to get that medical pathway. It's not like that. And so when I raised that question a few years ago, right before the pandemic, Joe Lindley was still with us.
I remember, yeah,
And they told me that as long as the child was taking a VOAG class per semester, we were obligated to pay that tuition. But I still raise the question, it's not really a program, is it? So,
And they're not graduating with a program diploma. They're
Correct.
graduating with a high school diploma with a
General
bunch of
studies.
mixed bag
Mhm.
agricultural electives.
and a football
Right.
letter jacket.
it's a
Yeah.
big number there. What is it, 126, 125? It's been
125.
around that for the whole time I've been here. I'm gonna raise the question again to
Sorry.
see if I get a different answer, but yeah.
So why is it they don't have to take a majority of their classes? To get that, I mean, it's
Because
like they're doing a minor study.
It's a program of study, that's all they're that's all VOAG requires their VOAG students to take.
That's a shame that it's on the hook for us when it's a minor,
Right.
but they're getting a major diploma, major accolade.
And I think we talked about this at this month's regular meeting, which
Correct.
was that they're getting recruited for the sports.
Right.
They're paying Thompson taxes and getting the Killingly VOAG experience.
For one class.
Well, to not even get a VOAG
Diploma.
diploma.
Right,
They're
it's
getting
not
a
like they're
general.
going to Ellis
You can get a
Tech.
general
Right,
ed
yeah.
diploma.
Right, at least with Ellis, they do their 1 year of exploratory, they get put in their shop and they
they're
continue
gonna do
that
it.
to the end.
Right.
And that's a.
And that's how it should
And
be.
that's the
Graduated
program.
status
That's,
program.
there's nothing, there's no guardrails that keeps those students in those particular programs, except
And remember, for Ellis, we provide transportation only. We
Right.
don't pay tuition.
Are we providing Killingly?
yes.
Tuition and transportation.
Mhm.
Correct, that's why it's like,
And when you speak to the state, can you explain what they're kind of doing that is a loophole situation? Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
maybe they can reimburse us for that. loophole.
Well, it's the-
State.
They-
the-
Kind of like a credit
Right.
program on the.
There
State
was
needs to-
a legislative bill for
Last year.
last year about them no longer being able to charge tuition, but I don't think that
It didn't.
it didn't go forward.
I actually wrote a letter of support for our district. Because I believe that should be on the state to pay that
Mhm.
if they choose to go like Ellis.
Yeah.
So I was in support of that bill, but it didn't sail through. I'm hoping it gets raised again.
Well, and I don't want to punish the students that are actually going for a
Right.
VOAG degree,
Correct.
right?
Right.
I think
This
there are
wouldn't punish those
Right.
students. Yeah,
No,
this
but-
is just reining in the ones that are taking advantage of it.
advantage, of, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I have a question on legal. Do we need to, if we have to increase the, business office secretary's salary, can we reduce legal? Because we don't have as many negotiating contracts this year. We have one. I know
We
that.
did already reduce legal though, didn't
No,
we?
you didn't. We were 61 in the last year's salary. We put in 61 in this year's budget, I mean. And we project to spend 62.
I think.
Oh, our projected spend is higher than that.
Well,
That's, yes, a relatively recent.
well, let's look at that.
I think Kathleen, the reason why we were relatively flat there is I think we have two types of legal activity. One, the negotiations, although they'll be dropping off, there seems to be, and Melinda, maybe you can elaborate on the student side, perhaps there seems to be more related activity that, so it's, I think we ended up flat because one was decreasing and one was increasing.
I agree with Kathleen that, obviously, we don't have 4 contracts to negotiate like we did this year, which takes up a lot of legal time. However, I'm hesitant to reduce that line only because of the student issue and honestly, the personnel issue, because things come out of nowhere and then we have to engage the attorney.
Fair enough.
It's not,
But there was conversation around that, Kathleen, and that 61 was it wasn't just that put in there.
Oh, no, I know, I'm not saying that. I'm just reading the question.
I know this is, this projected spend is probably off based on the invoices I gave to Eileen last week,
Recently, right?
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Unfortunately, this.
Well, then that's fair.
was before those
That's fair.
invoices.
because you gotta remember, there's also, when we have expulsion, there's 2 attorneys, right?
Yeah,
So I'm
right.
just gonna. So just for our education, when there's a student issue here, you consult legal 70% of the time?
I don't think so. I would say it's about 30% of the time, depends on what the issue is.
Okay.
If it's a student that I'm gonna bring to you for expulsion,
Then
then
that's
I'm gonna consult the attorney. Otherwise,
And that's generally
um,
2 attorneys though, right?
we have 2, well, that's for an expulsion
For
hearing.
expulsion.
The district employs 2 attorneys. We have the BOE attorney, and then we have the special education attorney. The special education attorney costs us hardly anything, but he was worth his weight in gold last year. When we had that situation where we almost were on the hook for a 24/7 residential setting, and we were able to negotiate out of that. I don't even think Andrew's legal bills were $5,000. I mean, it was low, but saved us $250,000. So we had somebody who's really specializes in that area. We secured that attorney years ago, when actually Pullman and Conley's attorney was not very responsive to Chris, and he needed somebody. When we need somebody for special ed, we need somebody for special ed. And that attorney was not very responsive. So we went with the other firm, and then we just, Steve does all of personnel, and does all the BOE work and negotiations. So the bulk of that line goes to Pullman and Conley.
And the bulk of it is negotiations, though, correct?
It is, or it is student issue or personnel issues, which
Okay.
can rack up depending on how much time the attorney. That's why you mentioned before, how we went out to bid years ago, we were paying well over 400 an hour,
Yeah.
and we're down to 290.
295 or something, right?
Right, and we get comparable services. I think Steve does a nice job. But, it ebbs and flows with, what's happening in the district with students and, personnel. But I try not to call the attorney, because in my head, I'm clicking up the time. But there are certain things you don't want to put the district at jeopardy for, and I don't want to make the wrong move without having some counsel input, so.
We need to really focus on some of those policies this year too, now.
And we started that, and because we were running over in legal with the
Right.
negotiations, we kind of put the brakes on that, but that's the other thing, you're
That's
right.
right.
policy.
Policies need to be included this, we need to, but some of them.
some we can
get
do without.
Paid, so
Yep.
we're saving money there.
Yep.
But some of them we need to have legal advice with, and we need to, it's been a few years since we've
Yeah,
really
and-
delved into.
Yeah, and if we can bang out, in the case when we were using the lawyer, Melinda.
Yeah.
We would sit down for an hour, but we'd bang out 4 of them because she had, 4 at once.
Yes.
Right,
So,
so we need to catch up on.
Aye, aye.
review it.
And maybe
some more
that's
of
work
those.
for the summer.
before we get so far behind.
Yeah, we don't want to get behind again like we were a
Yeah.
couple years ago.
Um, Any other questions on district-wide? I don't have, we know the health insurance and all the life insurance. So what did workers' comp do? That's always been my biggest thing.
Get a number on that. Did you, Bill?
Workers' comp, 3.4%.
It wasn't quite,
That's good. That's good, Phil.
well,
Boy, Bill.
That's good. Workers' comp only went up 3.4%. The banner year. What happened to health insurance? Oh, health insurance you got going up 58%
which line? Kathleen?
in district-wide. Somebody changed the
267,
coverage.
267.
So that is actually the explanation.
Well, we'll have to see it all. That's why I like it by object code too, because then you can see it all together, that it only went up 8% in the budget, but
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Kathleen, because there's, just like we were talking about with the para and other health conditions, it's also dependent on the mix of people's coverage and whether you have how many positions you have in the budget. So if you had the exact same people in the exact same positions from year to year, you would see that 8%.
Yeah.
If you have new positions, or if people got married, someone, who were you talking today, Mo? Somebody said there was a lot of people got married last year.
I
You
said
did,
it, yeah, there's several people that got married this year.
That jump from single to a family plan is about $15,000 in addition.
okay. So even if I did it by object code, I'd see more than an 8% increase. And that's because of the mix of
The
the
mix,
people
right.
changing plans.
And that is actually similar to how we do salary for the budget bill. We go through every employee on the payroll roster.
Well,
We
yes.
look at single plus dependents or family or no coverage, because there are a fair number of people who don't carry our benefits. And then we build that health insurance number based on the actual coverage.
So that's zero-based
So,
budgeting.
yeah.
Versus
Right.
just taking last year's health and slapping 8% on.
Exactly,
Okay, well, that's good to know.
That's
We
almost,
started that last year.
yes.
I guess cafeteria took a decrease as well, 15.8.
The decrease on the cafeteria is largely influenced by the fact, if you remember last year, we decided to shift a portion of their benefits to the cafeteria fund.
Oh, that's right.
And that's continuing at the same rate, 70,000.
70,000.
70,000, and that gets booked monthly.
Is that in the code, the object code on that one? Where is that? 50270.
If I went to object code 50, what is it? 50270?
Yeah,
Oh.
see, that's kind of like a subset of the object code, you know?
Yeah, that's what I keep bringing up about the object code, is that object code spans every school, cafeteria, security plan.
So it's almost like you need a
Okay,
subset.
so in actuality,
Gonna make him lose his hair. Come on.
percentage code of that line, of that object is an increase of 13.6%.
I'm sorry, Kathy.
When I go to the object.
Yep.
And I look at that 50270 health
Yep.
insurance,
That's right.
it actually increased from budget to budget by 13.6%.
Right, okay,
All right, and
so
Even
8%
though our-
for,
premiums are going up
yep,
by 8%.
right. The
That is
mix,
due to the mix.
Right.
Of
the
everything,
mix and the marriages.
the mix of the
would get-
marriages.
would change
Well, the
from 8 to
people
13.6.
changing types of plans, new
Yeah.
employees coming in with
Right.
different. And those two new people that you hired to be determined, you budget for them at the family plan.
We actually budgeted the two, you caught me, Kathleen. We budgeted the two paras at single.
Yeah, we,
And that was because we took a look at the para coverages. I bring it up, but once again, that spreadsheet has everybody's
okay,
personal information on it. If you look at the types of coverage that are carried by the paras, it's actually there aren't that many families in there.
okay,
So we felt that that was a reasonable, but we did do both of them at single.
all right. Typically, we do families.
You're right, we do.
Okay. Well, so then it's just due to people changing, getting married
Yes.
and, or types of plans changing and,
That's the additional
okay.
4 or 5%.
I know it's extra work for you to keep track of everybody and do that, but it's worth it. I mean, you're getting a lot of detail and
And
it's
that's why we went
and
to-
precise. So it's accurate, but it's precise.
It's
I
a
like
lot.
precision.
I feel it's a lot more defensible.
Yeah.
I would like, from a budgeting perspective, I wouldn't mind if we had a little bit of cushion in that line, because people do get married during the year,
Mhm.
you know. But
So, yeah, the real number was $352,000 increase in insurance and health insurance.
Yes.
And if we could put in 400,000 or,
right,
But if we go to the Board of Finance, the Board of Finance can't say, well, how'd you make this number up? You know exactly, and within one person, two persons of, you know, if notwithstanding somebody getting married, there you go.
and we do this, we take the same exact approach on the town side.
Yep, up the hill.
And
down
now
the hill.
the idea was that we tightened that up on the health insurance calculation, but we established a contingency fund, a more robust contingency fund.
Right.
30,000 at the school, and I think we started at 90 on the town side last year. But ironically, the contingency fund got whittled down during budgeting because they started using it to fill other gaps in the budget.
Right,
So we were using contingency before it was even an actual budget.
right.
But at least we had some contingency on both sides.
Gotcha.
Because whether it be Oilers or at the town hall right now, elevators. You know, nobody saw that coming. That's, you know, $50,000 to $70,000 depending on who you're talking to.
Something there.
Because of a leaky roof. There's a lot of moving parts.
Yep, yep.
Oh, yeah, one thing, on, school security. There's 2 line items in here, but I thought we were being paid or reimbursed by the town, weren't we?
There is in the town budget, I believe it's $60,000, and that'll be part of be subject to discussion on the town side for 2025. But as the money spool up, that $60,000 will come up and offset our expenses.
What line are you on, Tom?
Then it
Looking
hasn't
at
happened
line, 2, or is that 39? Okay.
I will say that Greg keeps a very meticulous budget, to the penny. So he knows what he has to work with.
Yeah.
We did increase his budget, was it last year or the year before, Bill? A little bit. He's still running well in the black.
He didn't ask for anything this year.
He did,
Right, but do those numbers go away? Because I thought we were fully funded. Maybe it's my misinterpretation, but I thought we were fully funded either by the grant. Or it was picked up through the selectmen's office.
so the town has, I thought it was a near 60,000. And initially, when we put the security program in place, that 60,000 was for the coordinator. And then the hourly rate wages for the security people at, at night and during the day, was on the BOE side.
Okay.
Greg restructured that, and remember, we came to a consensus that we wanted a security person in each school full-time, so there is one full-time, and then we have the part-time people that are at night. Very often it's Roy or some of the other part-timers that he has. And so we increased the budget a little bit last year to cover the overages we had the year before. If you remember, we went over in that line and we had to transfer some money into that line that year because we were going over, not on the coordinator's salary, but on the day-to-day people. And we didn't have at that time a full-time person in each school.
Okay. So the number here of 85, 184. Is that really 145?
Yes.
All right, minus the 60,000 reimbursement. Okay, all right, that's. Okay.
Justin has a point.
Along those lines of town, school, there's rec programs that are here on the weekends. Is that there's custodial staff that gets paid to be here. There's security that's here as well. Is that covered under BOE or is that covered under rec?
So that's an agreement that Amy and I had made years ago, is that there were expenses being charged from the town to the BOE, from the BOE to the town, like salt and sand or other kind of work that the town does for us. And it was crazy and it was going back and forth. So what we had decided to do is that we cover the expenses of the custodian and security, because there is some security money on the town side. And then when we need something from the town, like we just got, new to us, a truck from DPW. We needed a truck. They just gave it to us. And so there's a lot of that, I guess it's
Relocation of
bartering,
assets.
helping each other out, working together.
Which you can do in this atmosphere that you couldn't do 4 or 5 years ago.
Right, I agree with it 100%. I just think when it comes to communications and presentation time,
Okay,
it's transparency like that needs to get exposed to the town, because we'll hear the mansion on the hill, we'll hear, they've got the checkbook, we'll hear it all. But it's not usually the other way, where there is a fair amount of sharing of services. There are the ones that are on paper, like Bill and Tech, but then there are the ones that are not on
Yes.
paper. That, town meeting gets moved from the library to the gymnasium
correct. Or,
and spends 4 hours.
or we need a van and we ask Amy if we can borrow one of their vans. That happens a lot.
Or an auditorium for a town meeting, and tech services that supports that for the town meeting. Cleaning, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
If we're talking oil, heat bills and electric bills and things like that, and I don't say that the town spends a lot of it, but if they're 5%. That cost
runs the gamut, But as Matt was saying, we've had the best working relationship for now.
4 or 5 years.
Yeah,
And I think it's awesome to be transparent about that as well, right? We've had a great working relationship with the town, and this is how the town benefits from the school, and this is how the school benefits.
yeah, shared services, cost efficiencies, whatever it is, you're right.
We just had that conversation last week with Amy, because even though we got our old new truck, we still are down a vehicle. And so we had a meeting with Joe and Bill and Amy and I to find out if the town has any plans on purchasing a pickup truck, and could they give us their other old one. And so Joe is working on that on the backside, because Bill does still need another truck. Correct, Bill?
We need a truck.
So we're hoping the town can help us out with another.
Vicky?
I was just gonna say to Justin's point, the piece of the transparency on that is if the budgets were to get separated, you wouldn't be able to do that. right? And that's a key point that the town needs to clearly understand,
Mhm.
is that all these things, not only are you helping or transitioning, but that's probably saving a part-time person for Bill, right? Because if you separate the two budgets, no handshakes, right? Legally, you can't handshake those kinds of things. You have to transition and account for every line item. So I think it's really important that that gets communicated correctly.
Oh, yes, it cuts down on all those invoices flying back and forth, which were ridiculous. Like, we use a lot of salt and sand. We don't pay for that anymore. The town just gives it.
Well, and the negotiated oil contract and fuel contract, right? Bill spends the time to negotiate that contract and it's for the town, right? School, town, everybody. If we were negotiating ours and they were negotiating theirs, it would be a significant difference.
Yes.
I remember when, I don't think I was on the board, but when we combined the workers' comp,
Yes,
it was a huge saving for down the hill.
I think it's things like that, that from a communication standpoint, need to get refreshed during the budget seasons, because I think people forget, even though we mentioned it last year that, you know, tech and HR are shared. And this is a, you know, great new thing over the last 4 years. It's still continuing and it's still continuing to save the town money.
Good point.
Kathleen. In that point, can we get some documentation or calculation on exactly how much we give back and forth?
that'd be a little hard, but
I know,
because some
but
of it
like
is
if we,
just
Kind of defeats the
simply
purpose.
helping each other out. So I don't know
Right.
if there's a money value to it, but we can certainly list those things that we share and help make each other's organization run nicely.
yeah,
I don't think either one of us are getting more than the other because
Right.
we're constantly asking each other.
But yeah, just a
Just
list, a list
yeah,
wouldn't have to be monetary.
listing,
I think
because-
it's great. It's, we all think it's great and to point it out to the people who don't understand is great.
Yeah, we've taken down the wall.
Yes.
Take down that wall.
Well, and.
Or lifted the iron curtain, or
Yeah.
one of those two we could compare it.
At a 1.3 is what it's currently at. I mean, could we imagine what that would be if we weren't sharing services? Do we even want to consider, I mean, you know, that number would be, I think, considerably high. If God forbid the split were to happen now, that number would be astronomical. Unpalatable is a better word.
Yeah,
You know, this is credit to boards and boards and boards, because these cost efficiencies are, you know, when it comes time. You know, when budgets are trying to be passed, everybody forgets that there are huge cost efficiencies
Well,
at all levels.
I mean, we've always joined together with the town on the health insurance, because they did realize that a long time ago. That the town itself can't cover
Yep.
their 33 employees for health insurance. So they always combined the school, but it wasn't until 5 or 6 years ago that Dawn broke over Marblehead that, hey, workers' comp could do the same thing.
Mhm.
And there was a lot of pushback on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like,
Plus, we had the fuel is done, right?
right, but that was a
Also-
long time too. I mean, it was Mike Martin that
Yep.
actually worked with you.
But now, I mean, again, HR, technology, I mean,
Yeah,
just,
I
we
mean,
could
all
list
that's
off
coming.
kind of high level things.
Mhm.
It's probably not a bad exercise, and I know we've said it multiple times, but keep reinforcing it.
Oh,
We'll
sure.
probably have a slide
I
from
think
last
that
year.
list is a
Yeah, I
great
think-
idea. Just list everything that we do.
Is it on the
Com-
communication?
I have to look, we have it somewhere,
One of those, did you knows, probably?
might be probably.
I mean, like when a town meeting goes from, you know, the library to 500 plus people. And they gotta throw chairs up in the gymnasium
And then clean it.
and then clean it.
Yeah.
And provide the heat for it and the lighting and all that, and, you know, the parking lot and the security guards for the doors. I mean, I think. That specific instance, I remember, they brought in 2 additional security guards. And we paid overtime for custodial staff.
Thank
For that
God it passed by one vote.
Right. Yeah.
Isn't that
No,
tonight?
it's a tie.
It was
It's a tie.
It's a no.
failed by a tie, 275 to 275, I'll never forget it.
Yeah, it was a tie.
Cause if it,
'Cause
went-
I was
if it,
out of
if it
town.
approved,
Way to go, Kathleen. We missed the field goal because of you.
Here are taking a look at a grant that we write.
right,
Right.
You know, that obviously it's her time, right? Or Tira sending me some grant information that she sees. Or she needs a letter of support from me because she's putting something in on the town side that has some relation to education. There's a lot of that going on. Even with Teague, if you throw Teague in that.
Well,
mix
that's
too.
another thing too.
So-
Teague, you're right.
I mean, we plow there a lot, we shovel, I mean, we take care of that. Our security does rounds down at Teague.
JRB. That-
JRB,
that's-
YSB. Yes,
Yeah,
there's
no,
a
you're
tight
right.
relationship with all three entities.
Yeah, we do forget about the Teague though.
On Teagues, I think. Teagues
Finally
looking for
working
an
together,
expansion.
unity,
Yeah.
unity.
parking lot.
Yep.
that They have on the side.
Yep.
It'll look like that hill that goes up to the.
I don't know, interfere with that darn truck.
Any further comments? Anything we need Bill to, we've already given him a couple.
I've got them all too.
And you've got them all written
Oh,
down.
wait, I can come up with more homework assignments if Bill would like.
So is there anything else, is there anything else in here that you would want clarity on, like? For grouping? Like, on the district wide, I see that there is one technology line on line 775. You know how you're putting things into their own cost centers now?
Yep.
Are there any of these that are kind of fuzzy gray areas that? You know,
No, I think by and large, it's pretty clean. I mean, the object look, I'm sure that I want to cover a couple of little wrinkles as I go.
Yeah.
Because we just simply haven't looked at it in that sort of roll up before. We've always, my understanding was the board preferred to have that look by school.
each cost center.
We can do both. I mean, we did it for this presentation and it just adds another step to the finalization of the presentation.
I think this reads well, and Kathleen, I know this was one of Kathleen's concerns years ago, was how do we get this to a cost center base? You know, getting it to the right cost centers, which I think we're getting finally.
I think the confusion there with objects will come when people just have to be mindful that it's that type of expense across the entire district, not just the high school or the middle school or. So that's why sometimes it'll look a little different than what people expect.
Yes, Joe.
Sorry, go one more.
All right.
On the last page, the budget analysis, primary budget drivers for by department. If.
So just so you know, Justin, this is from the version of our original meeting.
Mhm.
This one hasn't been updated for the para, essentially the para changes, but yeah, go ahead.
So under middle school, you have contractual salary increases as a driver. Right? I think. Something that might help us, especially when we come to presentation standpoint, is contractual salary increases for each school.
Yeah.
Whether it's a main driver or not. I think that's a good number to make sure that
And
we're,
it would be for each, and I think what I think I'll also split that. Try to split it as best I can, the 3% increase. Or just the contractual, because it's not. Once again, going back to that salary worksheet, each of the salaries for the teachers are based on their specific. Step advancement, thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
The paras have levels, the teachers have.
Yeah, it's not just 3.25 across the board.
Right,
And
it's lumpy, depending on if you're a fifth-year teacher or a sixth-year teacher. That lumpiness is reflected in the actual numbers. Every single teacher in that worksheet has their step assigned, that drives their salary. So it'll be
We have to be
I'll
careful.
have to think about how to split that.
Yeah, cause
Yeah.
Justin, we have to be a little careful because let's just, someone could say, well, how come middle school is getting a 6% increase?
Right. And it
But
might
they
just
have more
to do with
teachers
the
that are
timing.
moving step, right?
Right.
You know.
So and I don't care if it's district wide or if it's by school, but contractual salary increases, the contractual stuff
Right.
is the stuff I'm trying to break out.
Yes.
Yeah, the middle school says
But still-
contractual, the other ones just say salary increases. I think we should be consistent and say contractual stuff.
Right, so,
Because all of it is contractual. There's nothing affecting teacher comp.
Understood, but
Except, I guess you could say, if we were to hire another teacher that we didn't have last year, that would all also flow into the salary line.
you don't have any
Split out.
district-wide, we don't have any salary increases under district-wide. Because they're not a big enough number, or,
That's exactly it.
But so I think. Sorry. did you-
no, I think I think you and I are on the same.
So give me the
If you
contractual.
can make a something like this, not this one, but okay, I don't remember offhand, a $20 million budget. Of that $20 million, if we could have just the contractual stuff, say, teachers have to make this much by a contract, but electricity it's gonna cost us this much. Boom, 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 boom. So that's 18 million of that $20 million is where our hands are tied, and it's $2 million is what we need for. It's 10% of the budget that's not fixed. Obviously, I'm making these numbers up. I'm just making these numbers up, but so if we could get at least a back of the envelope kind of thing on a.
If I remember right, we have something similar to that in.
well, that's what, if you run the budget by object code, that's what it does. And if I added up all the salaries, which I haven't done yet,
Right, but
you're
for
gonna
the,
see
for the
that
people in the cheap
80%
seats.
of our budget is salary.
Right, but for the people in the cheap seats, if we could have something like this.
Well, you could,
Yeah.
and that's
If
what I,
it's not too much trouble.
well, I was gonna do that. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Only
I
'cause
know in the-
and then the rest of it is going to be and the benefits.
Yeah. Our
It's
hands
gonna
are
be
tied.
about 70% of your budget.
It's a graphical version of what is in this column on the.
Yes, thank you. And yeah, that's,
And I know we do a similar to almost exactly what you're asking for, Matt.
I know you
can remember
do.
what Belinda pulled
Right.
together in the
So that's,
presentation.
the
Right,
break.
that's what I was
of
going
our
for.
budget is by,
Big chunks for the whole district.
Right. And it's a little
Yeah, it
sliver
was a
of,
pie chart.
It was a
wasn't
pie
it?
chart.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fixed
yeah.
costs.
Little,
but if we had actual numbers, it would hit them, well, we do put numbers on the pie
Yeah.
chart.
but
If you had, like you said, bing, bing,
boom, boom,
bing.
boom, and you come down to the fact that we're only spending. 10% of our budget on things that the kids should have, and it's, not that they shouldn't have teachers and heat, but.
Well-
books and Chromebooks and, things that are.
Yeah.
They're not luxuries, but they're necessities, but legally, so, yeah, that's the impactful thing. And I
Transportation
don't
is
know-
almost 1 point, almost 2 million. And then you've got regular.
But
special
that's by
ed tuition at
contract.
1.3.
It is by
Transportation is by contract.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
a negotiated contract.
right, so we have
Right.
to do it.
Last year was 0, this year was.
5%.
Yeah.
and then there
Hands are
was some
tied, we
savings.
gotta do it. No matter what no matter what the voters say, we have to spend like I said, again, I'm just making numbers up, of the $20 million, we have to spend 18 million of it, whether the voters want to or not.
Oh,
So
gotta spend
that's-
more than that.
No, I'm just
Yeah,
making,
no, I know what you're saying.
so we just really need to make that impactful thing. I know we have something like that, we do it every year, but I'm just really
I get it.
getting wound up about it, sorry.
Oh,
And you just said transportation is up 5%.
By contract.
Mm,
Our budget this year is up 4.7.
Right,
So we're doing awesome. I mean.
Yeah.
So the offset there is the fuel savings.
Mhm.
that myself, Bill and Amy negotiated jointly. Town and school.
Mhm.
That was nice to see. It's one of the few bright spots.
mm.
Mhm.
But I think there are a lot of bright spots. Overall, that just don't get highlighted.
It's a lot of hard work. It's a
It
lot of
could
hard
be
work
a lot
on,
worse.
yeah.
We just need to highlight. Like you said, we need to highlight that in our presentation.
And make it and make it palatable, cheat sheet,
Yeah,
cliff note versions. For the consumables from the public.
Yep, short, sweet, to the point, and drill it on home.
if,
One thing, I know whenever we do the presentations, I know you've done the presentations a few times, Melinda's done the presentation a few times. Should we try something completely different? Just throwing this out there. When I was driving last week home and I was listening to the meeting via Zoom in the car. When Bill did the initial summary of what the budget was. It was short, concise, and financially, I'm gonna say financially pleasing to, I'm assuming. The audience, which is the Board of Finance. So I'm just saying, is it a different approach?
Okay.
And then when we get into the details, that's where we come in. But he did a very good job at summarizing it in the beginning to just lay the groundwork.
Well.
It
we
just
can
a thought,
discuss That, right? I think that's
because I think when we do it the other way, I think we go
too deep.
deep,
I
detailed
don't like that.
before you get into that, right? That's why I'm thinking we
Yeah.
go with a summary first,
Yeah.
so.
I think Amy does a great job presenting the town. Hers is just top level, but then they get into the weeds.
Right, which
They
we still
don't
can,
get in the weeds with us.
That's, yeah.
right,
Board
that's
of
why,
Finance doesn't get into the weeds with our
in the
budget.
past,
so that's why I think
Yeah,
if we
maybe
go
the-
finance to finance, it might be a better approach, just putting it out there.
and if I may say, I don't know if anybody said it out loud yet, I, for one, am excited and appreciative that we have 3 members of the Board of Finance in the.
We did, yes,
meeting.
we have, and
So,
yeah, you missed it last week.
I'm
but
sorry,
we did,
sorry, I missed last week.
We have
so
thanked
it's-
them
it's
at the
great.
Board of Finance meeting. I thanked them too,
Yes, so it's huge.
Very
It's huge for
appreciative
us.
that
and,
they
yeah.
have joined us.
Yep.
Yes. But, so because we typically don't, they don't get in the weeds with our budget because they can't change line items. Whereas on the
Okay,
town.
I hate that excuse.
But
Mhm.
so they can't change line items. And in the past, it has been yep, we're gonna go with X% or X dollars.
Mhm.
But I think one of the things that we need to make sure gets communicated clearly is that contractual piece. This is what whether or not we're coming back to you because we have to.
Mhm.
We're gonna come back to you month 11 of the budget cycle of the finance fiscal year because we had to. And that's not that's not good on their part. It's not good on our part.
Hold on to that though. They cut us $1 million last year, and guess what? We're coming in on budget.
Mhm.
That means, did we need the $1 million?
But yes, and this goes back to our discussion. This goes back
I'm
to,
playing devil's
No,
advocate because we could have done a lot with that million.
well, and
So I can tell you that out in the field,
Yeah.
it's having a direct impact on kids.
Absolutely.
That's our answer.
And what-
But that'll be their.
test scores. But we've talked about this almost every meeting since I've been on the board. We've made it work. Melinda and I had this conversation.
Making
and
it work isn't the best
We
strategy.
can
Exactly.
legally not make it work. That's the issue.
But exposing what has had to suffer to make it work.
Right.
What has had to take,
Yeah.
we haven't been able to paint the locker rooms. We haven't been, is paint a big deal in the locker rooms? Well, no, it's not a big deal this year, but 3 years down the road, we have to replace lockers because they're rusted off their hinges. Then it's gonna be a big deal.
Yes, yes.
Right.
Right.
Or when,
Yes.
when kids can't read in 4th grade because they didn't get any instruction in kindergarten because there were no parents to help the kindergarten teacher.
Or,
Right.
right?
Or worse, the reading teacher at the middle school has had a significant impact on overall learning at the middle school. Those two, the paras have really had an impact. I mean, the things we took out, we tried to do the best we could. The board tried to do the best they could, but in the end, it still is impacting students.
Right. So that $1 million, yes, we got by without it, but we
At
needed
what
it. We
cost?
still need it.
And I
At
think
what
some,
cost?
and I think some testimonial impact, whether it's in person or whether it's just via letter, Anonymous, it can be an anonymous letter, para in the elementary school, kindergarten teacher in the elementary school. This is how this impacted me. This is how this is impacting the children in my classroom.
Yep.
I could be doing so much more if I didn't have to be dealing with potty, bathroom issues,
Oh, I'm sure I could get a video of that.
but I don't want necessarily want.
Not that.
Wanted detail.
I don't know if that's gonna go over well if we put that at town meeting.
Yeah, don't ask, go around. Yeah, there goes the legal budget.
Right? 61 times 4. But I think some testimonial, even if it's not something that we speak to, but that's there.
And I agree with you, and I made notes on that to see, expose what it takes to make the budget work and what are those downsides of what happened last year. There are some significant downsides. The other thing that this board, and not tonight, but maybe the next budget meeting is, we need to take a look at the athletic budget. And the board has to make a decision around football for next year. There are 3 students that are gonna play football, and the cost of what that co-op costs us. Do I think it's worth hanging on to? Absolutely, but there's a cost to that, and the board should be aware of it. I will not recommend ever cutting middle school sports again in my career. That will be a decision made on the board side, but I will tell you, I oppose it vehemently, especially when we see that the middle school sports is so robust right now. And they are our feeders to the high school. But that comes at a cost. So when we're looking at the overall, budget, and when it gets to the point where we get a number and we have to make reductions, those are the things you start to look at. But that will have a devastating impact on our student body and their families. So, I mean, look at how you can't even get a parking space out here when there's games playing. So it's still very well attended and very much part of the community. So anyway, I think we should have that conversation, and if Deb's available next week, ask her to come just to go through that budget. We did reduce it a little bit, but we didn't touch those big ticket items like middle school sports, like the football co-op, those things.
In regards to sports, has anything been put in the budget for the scoreboard in the high school that's not working?
Scoreboard in high school, the scoreboard in high school is working.
All right, so it's all
What's
set
that?
now? Cause it went
It
out
went
last, one of the last games in the middle of it. It's,
That-
It was as of yesterday.
okay. All right, cause it was,
What's that?
We did.
Oh,
Reboot.
you
all
did?
right. Okay,
And that just brings up a good point, if athletics is coming up, when we did the whole track. And the whole track grant and the whole, go to referendum for the track, one of the things that the citizens said was maintenance of the track. Right, that is not something that we ever want to let fall to the wayside again, maintenance of our facilities once we get them rehabilitated. Is that in plant, or is that in athletics, or is that?
It's not anywhere.
currently,
Generally, Justin, it would fall in plant.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Historically, it's not always funded.
Well, and I think that's a great point. We went to the town for 1.1 million for a track. That they didn't know they were getting grant for at the time. And they approved it. On the town meeting, when we had the town meeting, one of the things that was really pushed on was, why did the old track go to the wayside? Well, because it wasn't maintained. Well, what's gonna be different with the new one if we approve it? Well, we're gonna maintain it. So if it's not a line item in plant now for athletic facilities maintenance, I'd like to see it as a specific line item for athletic facilities maintenance, whether that's varnishing of the floors, whether that's rehabilitation of the bleachers in the gyms, whether that's paint, whether that's track reset, whatever it is.
So those things are all in the budget, but the line items aren't broken out that way.
Yeah.
So the gym floors are under, plant and maintenance, general repair. The maintenance of the baseball field and the soccer field and softball field all fall under grounds. So those items are all in the budget. But not broken out specifically to athletic needs.
And there wasn't anything there specific to crack either.
I mean, I think it would make sense to add a line item budget. Pointing specifically towards our athletic facilities. Maintenance. And upkeep.
Maybe it could be just a lump sum of maintenance of athletic facilities.
That's fine.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then we can do an item code description that says. Refinishing of the floors, new basketball hoops, scoreboard, you know. This. Track maintenance, whatever it comes out to. But I think that there are people in this town that really believe that athletics help our students. Foster their growth both educationally and the camaraderie among the team. It brings together the town. I think that's one line item where even if it were to increase year over year exponentially. To an extent, I think the town would swallow that without a problem.
Need further comment. What is the focus of next week, next Monday?
So I'll see if Deb can come, and then that's kind of it for the individual departments and schools. I think we need to start taking a crack at looking at the presentation. I want to take, first of all, Bill and I need to answer these questions. So we'll go through that process and then start to put some slides together. And I know you don't want an in-depth presentation.
No.
So, you know, what should it look like? And start to sketch out at least based on what we did last year, and then you can throw out and add what you'd like to have in that presentation, and that dependent upon who's going to do that initial summary, what that presentation should even look like.
Can you forward us what the last year's
Yes.
presentation was, just so we
Danielle,
can see
you
that
have that,
in
right?
advance?
Yep.
Okay, although we'll start developing the presentation, have, if Deb is available.
Mhm.
We can review the athletic piece. I think we're pretty set on a number. We may switch it around somewhere, but we're pretty set on this number. Are we comfortable with what we're presenting, the number we're presenting?
Yeah.
900,000 increase, right, or
Yeah.
something,
The 4.7%.
Bill, you said a mill this year is 7.
It's 772,000, up $1,000 since.
I have that 771,000 you gave me.
Yeah, was that,
771. It works out to 1.255 mil our increase.
772,700, that's. the-
Oh, all right, I wrote it down, right, Ron?
No, it's probably, it's a new number, Kathleen, I
Okay,
I've
seven
tested all
seven two,
about
so
that.
we're at a 1.25 increase. Not a 1.3 increase. Let's make it a little more palatable.
Let's go out to the third decimal place.
Precision.
Kathleen,
Yes,
this, or Bill, Kathleen, whoever, the new assessments that'll be coming out. The new assessments, they're gonna be coming around doing new assessments, right?
Yeah.
So this 772.7 does not change. Except for if the grand list changes between now and June 30th.
and this is.
I don't
Paul's
remember what it was last
expectation
year.
as to where it will be.
Yeah.
He thinks this is where it'll settle out. It might
Yeah,
creep
there,
up a little bit, but it's not gonna.
for some years it's been in the
Fortunately.
600s, you know,
I was hoping that we would get some lift from appreciation, and it was,
nothing.
I mean, a couple $1,000. It was very disappointing. And the conversation with Paul, and he's seen this recently in valuations, he feels like, you know, the very favorable increases we've seen for the last year or so in real estate have sort of tapered off at this point. They're not turning downward, but they're flattening out. And that's reflected in this increase. Which is unfortunate for us, but then that's what it is. Just gotta go with the facts.
Okay, if we're finished with the budget presentation, I'm gonna turn it back over to citizens' comments, and we have somebody right there who.
Talking about a little line that's number 337. $5,000 would be that's next year. It does nothing. Do you use that or is that necessary?
Which line again?
I'm sorry.
Line number 337.
337.
How is he repair and maintenance?
Not a giant number, but
To use it yet.
I thought that I had, but I can double check that.
yeah, I mean, I don't know whether the current year isn't right, maybe, or, but if it is, it doesn't look like you use it or need it. Oh my God. Sort of bigger picture things, I think last year was this giant $1 million cut. But the typical citizen driving down the road says, well, the school's still there, we got $1 million. What's the problem? So I think it's really important to get the message that the cut was real and it hurt teaching, hurt kids, and it made a difference. If it didn't make a difference, then the taxpayer driving on the road saying school's still there is right. But if it did make a difference, we need to make sure citizens understand that. If they don't understand that, you're gonna see the same kind of thing in the future. If it didn't matter, then they were right. If it made a difference, you really need to explain it, because I don't think it's very clear. It's not obvious to the person driving down.
Well, you wouldn't see that the field trips for the entire district were canceled, right?
I understand, but
So,
a typical citizen, especially one that doesn't have kids in school, what? Nothing changed. School's still there. Look at it.
so how do you put context or quantify, cultural growth? You know, I mean, obviously there's the educational growth when you look at the test scores, because you hear it all the time. Why am I gonna keep investing if your test scores go down? Well, that's the reason. You're not investing, so what, how are you gonna advance?
And
you
if they
know?
go
So-
up, it's, well, see, you didn't need the money.
Well, you're right. I mean, that's where,
Well,
again, you know, we make do with what we have because we have to, but you're not advancing. So you raise a very good point. This has been the struggle. How do you quantify it?
I don't have an answer for you, but
Say that again.
that's what has to be explained.
Yeah.
There are certain things where these kids don't. And I can see if I can find the one from New York that we had, but kids who don't get field trips and don't get the theater and don't get the culture tend not to leave. Right? And it perpetuates what you have as a Title I, right? Because they don't understand what's out there. It develops anxiety, it develops fear, it develops a non-worldly child because they missed out on those things that trigger the need to explore the understanding of the creativity. I think that this group did a great job last year, like just going to Woodstock or just, going to other schools to see their plays, right? That in and of itself brings some of that, it's outside their world. So there are sociological studies that show that. See if I can pull some of them up for you guys, but
You know,
there
it's
is a
sad.
way to quantify
Yeah,
it.
it is, it's very sad because, not this weekend, but last weekend, Heather and I was sitting there, we were looking at our yearbooks, just talking about things. West Point. You know, the different aquariums that we all went to. You look at the Vanderbilt mansions, you look at all these different things, Ellis Island, Statue of Liberty, you name it. Washington DC, I mean, you look back at it now as an adult. You really don't appreciate what you did back then, but I'll tell you what, you remember those things.
Yep.
And a lot of the students coming through the schools now do not get that opportunity to really understand what a lot of our grandparents went through to come here. when you went to Ellis Island and, you know, looking at all the books. Crazy. But we've gotten away from a lot of that cultural and social development skills of what a field trip truly was. So you're right. Now we need to quantify that, though, to Steve's point.
And I know my daughter is in 12th grade. When she was in 4th grade. Time ago. When she was in 4th grade, we went on a field trip. I was a chaperone on a field trip. It was to down the Connecticut coastline. I forgot what park. I
They
forgot.
still do that.
They still do.
That's grant funded.
Okay, so that's grant funded, but I remember the teacher saying. Out of all the kids in the 4th grade, whatever, whoever went, said, most of these kids have never seen the ocean. It
Yeah.
just blew my mind. And so here we are in Thompson, you know, half the kids hadn't seen the ocean, and so we need to get them not necessarily to the ocean, but to plays and to Worcester and, you know,
Old Sturbridge Village.
Sturbridge Village. I can't believe that
We
they don't
that
go
too
there.
This year, so
Okay.
they are going.
Okay.
We did Plymouth, we did Freedom, you know, Faneuil Hall, the whole Freedom Trail.
Those are touchstones of living in New England. I grew up in New Jersey, but you would think that every kid would go there.
I
We
know.
did the World Trade Towers in 6th grade. I have photographs from that.
I mean, it was
I
just
remember that trip.
different.
Yeah,
Yeah, we did Old Sturbridge Village.
we did that.
That's
a
all
bunch
we
of
did.
times.
We got the advanced version. We went to Freedom Trail too.
I will say. that
But
they
it's
do
these are-
PTO and still
Yeah,
have field trips.
yes, and thanks to the PTO for a lot of
Thanks to the
things.
PTOs.
But field trips shouldn't be a luxury.
No,
Correct.
Field
Right.
trips are a necessary growth tool for students to understand, like Nikki said, the worldly world that's out there. I'm not saying we take the high school senior class to Disney, right? I'm sure they love it, but I am saying that a trip to Washington DC where they can understand how our government works, where they're about to enter it.
So
Full
we-
frontal.
We do offer the DC trip, not this year, because next year we'll offer it to freshmen and sophomores. The parents do have to pay for that trip. It's an expensive trip, but every other year, the DC trip still lives on as part of the Turtle Lot heritage. Bill knows, because he was my chaperone last
But
year.
it would be nice to be able to supplement some of that
It would
Yeah.
be.
It would be.
from the BOE side.
Yes, it would be.
If I might continue the other thing, I like actual versus proposed budget. Actual current year is proposed. I appreciate that a lot of people compare budget to budget. I understand that. That's not gonna change, but to really understand, for me anyway, really understand the current year, the projected requirement for the coming year. I'd like to know what's happening this year. That's more meaningful to me than what you have in the budget for this year. And I appreciate the fact that a lot of folks don't look at it that way, but at least for this kid, that's important.
we want to make you happy.
So
Pardon?
We want to make you happy, Steve.
Yeah,
I'll agree with Steve as long as we add context to it, sorry.
that's fine. I'm not-
As long as there's context added that that's not the final number and that the final number has X amount of months left.
Well, I don't want a year date. I'd like to see a projected year. That's what this should.
That's what it is.
Projected year, not that year. Another little item is the coordination between the town and the school. I think we talked about how it's helpful for the workings of both entities. What's really important, I think, is the impact on the taxpayer, that we really save the taxpayer money, not so much we save ourselves some effort, time, and so on, or it's easier for us. I think an important thing to communicate is this saves our taxpayers because, say, workers' comp cost or whatever it might be. I think that's the real message you want to try to get across. One little final thing, my little list here is tomorrow, I think it is. Well, last year I went to a spelling bee here.
Oh, yeah.
I would never have thought I would be at all interested in a spelling bee, but I got dragged to the spelling. We want to go. It is fantastic.
Wednesday night, right?
And I'm my kids were in spelling bee, but it was still a great experience. Like tomorrow.
Yes.
Mhm. I sent you.
You
that
get
link.
into it.
Yes, you did. I'm
Yeah,
gonna get
yeah,
it out.
post it out
Yes.
there.
I thought I did. I
I didn't
copied
see
it,
it
but I'll get it.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but it's a fun,
I didn't know whether to take those posts and start I
Oh,
was
yeah,
waiting for you to,
not yet, but the spelling bee one I
Yeah.
sent to you.
I thought I picked it out.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know I copied it, but I probably got
Yeah.
distracted.
It is nerve wracking.
Kathleen,
Yes.
just one question for Steve. Past board member always said that our budgets, this is probably a semantical thing, should not be a budget, it should really be a spend plan. So I know it's semantics. Does it make a difference to you? Because getting back to what Justin was saying, there's fixed costs, which is really, those are fixed spends. You can't budget it. See what I'm saying?
No, I'm not.
So I guess I'm gonna ask the former board member, Mr. Brissett. But he was adamant that this should be a spend plan and not a budget.
That came from Cave that time when they came out and did that workshop
Right.
and called it a spending plan. It wasn't a budget.
What's the difference?
Because there's fixed. I'd have to go back and look at it, but there is a difference between a budget and a spend plan.
So a budget, you move towards a goal number, a spend plan, you spend. And your big number is your big number, whatever, it's not a line item.
Hmm.
But I don't know that I would, just from a language perspective, I don't know that I would ever use a spend as a language word
Mm-mm.
in this type of environment. I would use, if I was gonna use any word, it would be investment plan.
Mhm.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
it might
no,
be
no, no.
semantics for words, but I would never use the word spend.
That would cause giant red flags and alarms ringing in 90% of the households in this town, if
Yeah.
you were to say that.
Could point to.
Sean might have his hand up, I don't know.
No, Tara does.
Tara does.
Sean doesn't count.
You look different.
Tara,
You died.
The reason why I was pushing that for a few years is trying to get people to understand that it's a living thing. It's constantly changing. You know, you guys are putting this together in February, and every July and August, it changes when kids come into district. And at the time, we were really pushing trying to get the Board of Finance to understand that the excess cost grant is really a lousy system in that if you get one child that costs $400,000, great, you're getting a bunch of money. But if you get 6 children that cost 80 grand, you're not getting a dime. And that's something that had to get reiterated every single year. And the reason why we were calling it a spending plan is that's what it is. This is what we expect to spend, but it might not be exactly that. And realistically, that's what they're approving. They're approving a spending plan. And we wanted to be able to go back at the end of the year and say, but these special ed kids came in, there was no way to budget for them. And so we should be asking for that money and we should be getting it. But I did want to mention something else though, going back to, you were talking, Tom, I think you were talking about the revaluations. I talked with Paul about those when that letter came out to everybody. Those aren't going to hit this year anyway. He doesn't expect to have those done until next fall for next year's grand list. And those numbers are going to drastically change. Everybody's going to choke on their revaluation when you get them because they're doing them completely different this time, and they're going to base them on real estate values. And anybody that's paid attention to their property value assessment based on the town, it's always been far lower than what your property's worth on the open market. And they're trying to bring that more in line. So next year is probably going to be one of those years where people are going to, first of all, be screaming that their property value went skyrocketing and not understand that it doesn't affect their taxes until the new mill rate comes out. But be that as it may, these revaluations that they're doing right now will have no bearing on this budget that's being worked on right now, because it's going to be on next year's grand list, not this year's.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah.
As far as the spending versus budget, everybody should realize that as soon as this budget hits a piece of paper, it's for that day only. Or as soon as you adopt it. It's not, it's a living, breathing, dead document.
Very much. It's the past.
Yeah. We put into it, or Bill puts into it, and all the administrators and people who create it, it's their best guess at that point in time. And everything changes. So whether you call it a budget, an investment plan, and I agree with Justin, don't use the word spend.
Yeah.
It ceases to exist.
And I know we really can't do it in this document,
Mm.
but to have contingency money, or have contingency money in each line item, so. We locked in a fuel price, that's a known thing, or the contractual value, those are known things, but things like the insurance, there should be a contingency, or, I can't, I'm not gonna. Say, but
That's-
all those things that are not locked in
Mm.
should have contingencies, even salary things, because if somebody quits and you hire somebody at higher steps, that's, could be
Yeah.
$50,000. So, but we don't do that. I don't know, are we even legally able to do it? Hypothetically speaking.
The problem with that, and believe me, it gets kicked around all the time, is the budgeting. Problem is, if you put contingency, some people say cushion or pad the
Yeah,
budget or whatever
yeah.
it might be. Number one, each line gets called into question, people start to doubt the
Right.
accuracy of your budget. That's why I like moving to a more precise
I agree.
amount when it came to health insurance and salaries.
Mhm.
But the problem there is those little pockets of contingency add up like you would not believe.
Right. So,
And
but,
all of a sudden, you're at 1,000,003 instead of 967,000.
So-
It's sort of a similar argument to. Very often, we've heard recently that. We heard a lot of noise about how could leadership in the town and the school not have been putting aside money for some of these capital items? If you look at the proposal, I'm sure Steve probably just gonna laugh out of that. Those proposals have been made year after year after year, and they're the first thing to hit the floor.
Right.
Because they're not an immediate
And-
pressing need.
and I know that, and I understand that, but that comes back to the living part of the document. So if we're, part of the living thing is, sometimes you bleed, and so you need a Band-Aid, and if we don't have money for a Band-Aid,
You bleed out.
you bleed out.
Just one more thing, that you had mentioned it earlier, and we're talking about contingencies. Maybe not as much as putting a number down contingency, but identifying the massive variables that could hit. And what I mean by that is, from a health insurance perspective, if 5 teachers decide that they're now gonna take the family plan.
Yeah.
That's 5 times 15,000.
Yeah, so just put potential areas of concern. List
But
them out.
potential areas of significant variability.
Right.
That's not a bad option.
And that's not even people getting married, Justin. That's somebody, their spouse loses a job. They're no longer on their nice corporate plan. They have to use hours, and it's a life-changing event, and it's enrollment.
Good point.
I mean, it could be, there was something else that was just in my head, forget it.
Sorry.
Nope, it's not your fault.
But those are examples of what does happen.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. and-
Inevitably, it does happen.
Yeah.
Fine, you're right.
Yes,
And it maybe if the town can't stomach seeing a contingency line item in our budget, perhaps it should sit in the. We tell the town what we're worried about. We think that there should be a contingency to cover the potential of 3 people to move out, moved into this plan. This is a lump sum number that we would love to see the town hold in their contingency. In the event that we run over because this happens, we ask, come to the town to ask for that money. That it's,
But it's.
I don't know.
You have a citizen. Brian should
Brian's-
speak.
yeah.
Yeah, I have to leave. I think you've pretty much gone over the budget as far as the people at Board of Finance are concerned. So, this discussion that you're having right now is very healthy, but unfortunately, I have to leave.
Okay.
So I appreciate the time. Please don't get upset when I rename back to Donna because I'm using her computer. So,
Thank you,
all right,
Brian.
everybody have a good night. Thank you for the information. I appreciate it.
Well, that we do have, if we have any money left this year, we do have that.
No, I know there's a non-lapsing account, but what I'm
Yeah.
saying is that just to have Amy aware of where we're concerned.
Well, I
Have
don't
her-
think we can cross boundaries with the town, though.
Well-
I don't think that's allowed.
Well,
But-
it's one budget, is it not?
Yeah.
Right, technically?
But to Heather's point, right, if we have. And I know it's getting late and I apologize. If we have 4 teachers move into town and it's $15,000 extra, that's $60,000. And they all take the family health insurance plan.
Mhm.
That's $60,000. That's gotta come from somewhere. And if that somewhere is no longer there, if we bled as much as we can bled from a stone,
Right.
we've gotta go back to the town and say, hey. I need your help.
Yeah.
We're stuck, right? That's, the same thing goes for if 5, like Sean's examples, 5 special education students move into town at $60,000 a piece. It's gotta come from somewhere.
Right.
So I think those types, all I'm trying to say is as part of our presentation. Being able to identify that level of exposure.
Right.
And say, here it is.
To that point, I am nervous about taking that $100,000 out of pupil services. That makes me nervous
Mhm.
because what we spent this year may not be, I mean, we're just,
Well, we're one prospective student away,
Correct.
yeah.
From
From-
$100,000.
$100,000, exactly.
Remember, we're on the hook for the first
But
night.
that'll bring us up over $1
Ninety-
million if we put that
I think we're up
100
to
back in.
98,000.
We're on the hook for the first 92 or 98,000, right?
Mhm.
So to your point, again, 1, 2, 3 students,
At
we
90,000.
go 90, 180, 270, like that.
Plus
But-
additional.
well,
But so Kathleen,
So to take 100 out. Because we didn't spend it this year because we were lucky.
And that's a. I think you have to put it in there somewhere.
but I think maybe not put it in the hard budget. But identify it as a potential variable.
Yeah, but if it's not in the budget, it's gone.
Potential variables don't get passed.
Right.
But,
Right.
and I get the
Neither
potential.
will the 100 because they'll take it out, but at least it gives something to take out.
You're most.
Again, I think identifying those large variables is, whether we put the 100 back in or not, I leave that.
Oh,
Up to my
it's
colleagues
something
that
to
have
think
larger
about
experience.
Because it makes me very nervous.
Yeah,
thinking.
absolutely.
That's
But
the
we
that's
went
one of the
through-
most volatile.
Yeah.
We went through
we've seen.
years. We went through years. Even when I was sitting out there, I just watched the special ed things go like this, like,
Yeah.
but more like this.
Yeah.
But, fortunately this year we're a little bit down, but it's.
Right.
It's
The
one.
Bradley changed the game for that, but still, it's not, it can happen, one kid.
Yeah, uncontrollable right there.
Right, so have a think about that. Let's discuss that next week.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a think about that. That's the real light item that bothers me the most.
Kathleen.
Not that we're gonna get all of this budget, but this is, our duty is to present the Board of Finance with what we need. We're not gonna push in anything. We're not gonna put bunch of
No,
numbers
we don't
in. This is exactly what we need to educate our children to the best of our ability.
Based
So-
on the information we currently have.
Basically,
Right,
So Kathleen,
Yes.
is it the placement line of 108 or is it the 80,000 from?
no, it's the $100,000
we're,
even.
Oh, sorry, 100,000.
Yeah, the
198.
So what's the 80,000 pupil services?
That's our reimbursement.
That's half of our special.
Yeah.
That's the half of the excess cost.
Yeah,
We
the excess
we added it in as revenue.
So line 191.
198 is the one that has the
$198 is
$100,000 variance from last year.
Well, there's also $100,000 variance in, sorry, it's not a full hundred.
Yeah, it's line item
198.
197.
Eight.
Eight, okay. Yeah, 190,
And what was the justification for taking that out?
That's
because we didn't spend it.
Oh, we didn't spend it this year.
When we went through the students that we currently have and the programs that they currently have, and we do have a couple of kids that are coming out of Bradley into gen ed, and so we felt there was a little bit more wiggle room from now until the end of the year.
Is that the reduction on the salary line?
It's a reduction on the tuition line.
No,
Correct.
but there is a salary reduction of 18,000, which is on line 168.
Yeah, you gotta, no, that's an increase.
no,
No.
168 is down 8.5%.
That we went through before you got here.
Yeah, but is that? Why are we decreasing the salary part on that?
We probably hired somebody at a lower rate of pay.
Okay,
Those are specifically identified in that.
okay, all right. Because when you take the 80 and then the 18, that's another 100,000. I mean, it's 98.
Right. That's another.
So there's actually 200,000 out of that program.
We know the excess costs we added in.
Those are ads. Where are you in the salaries? Those are ads.
So 191 shows
If you
an
take
80,000
190,
decrease.
if you take line 198 of 100,000,
Yeah,
then you take line 191 of
Yeah.
80,000,
right.
and then you take line 168. That totals $198,000.
Yes, but. then there are
168 is a plus, 66,000. That's a plus.
No.
No.
168.
Line 168.
168,
Is 18,000.
where are you?
First line of
Para
people
salary, you're
services.
adding 66,000.
No, you're on the wrong
No.
line.
Not 168.
This one, right here. I know the best way to do that, put
18,000.
the paper under it. It's the only way I can see it. It's not
all
progressive
scholars.
lenses.
You still have $66,000 in.
Looking.
Yeah.
That one, but they're
Bill,
talking about the one above.
ledger paper.
168, you got that one?
Yeah.
So they.
Gonna invoke spirit there later.
And at the
Oh,
front,
you're looking at the change to actual. That's not what we're looking at.
That's what we're all looking at.
No,
It's changed the budget.
change the budget.
Change the budget.
Right here, this one, right here. Pupil service 168.
Yeah.
So it's down 18,439, that's what they're saying. And then Tom said, add the 80, add the 100, and you get the
Okay, I'm looking
198.
at it.
Yeah, it's almost 200,000 out of the program. That's why I'm like,
Speaking of living, it's already dead.
yeah. So that's why I'm just saying that 200,000 is a big
Yeah.
number
What's
when
the
you look
80
at it.
from?
The 80's the
Excess
reimbursement.
cost
Okay.
revenue, that's the money we get back.
Yeah.
And we only took half of
Excess
it
spending.
because as that correspondence we got today, Bill, shows that they're,
I was really disappointed
yeah,
that things seem to be trending in the wrong direction on
correct.
special ed access costs again.
So to that point, this is a very volatile area
Oh, okay, I see.
for $198,000 hit. So
Yeah.
we don't have to do anything tonight. Just keep that in mind for next week.
Yeah, okay, I see where you are now.
Yeah.
I skipped down a line.
And going back to my original point, I think it's really important that we make sure
Okay.
the Board of Finance and the citizens understand the
This one,
volatility
Farrah's went down.
of
Oh,
things like that, things like our health insurance.
Yeah, I don't really care about those. Those probably have a very good explanation. It's just the $100,000 that I'm really concerned of. Just because we didn't spend it this year doesn't mean we're not gonna spend it
But-
next year. Yes,
Bill just said that there's a what was it?
Yes,
It's a reimbursement.
Reimbursement, the word from the state is that it's likely that we're going, everyone, not just us, is going to get less in excess cost reimbursement next year.
And we
We were at 181.
Okay.
Last year.
But that correspondence we got today said that the state actually allocated more in that line, and it's not being reflected and sent to the districts.
So where's it going?
Nobody knows.
Okay, so we're not gonna touch that. I don't
Oh, we did.
say we increased that. We have gotten a lot more money in the past.
Oh, yeah, but we had more students in out of district placements that cost a lot more. A lot of those children have transitioned into Bradley.
Right, and which is great, because that saved us, it had saved us as of last year. I don't know what this is gonna say, let's add on to that, almost $4 million.
Correct.
But it's the 100,000
And it shouldn't get to know.
focused on, all the others we can live with.
Kathleen.
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 Yes, yes.
Okay, so just to kind of wrap this up, that 967 you have, and we'll discuss that other 100 grand for the special ed next week. Does that actually accurately reflect repairing the damage we did last year in the paras and making sure that we have a good foundation to supplement for those students that are also now going to be showing a deficit from that this coming year? Because I don't think that number is gonna.
So the answer to that is yes, because we restore the paras in kindergarten, and we have a plan to restore the reading teacher at the middle school, and add a special educator to the middle school. So I guess the answer to that is yes. And then, not to get too deep into the weeds, it's all about tier 1 instruction in the classroom that needs to get bolstered up. And it's happening now. So I feel like all of those things combined are going to, if we get those positions back, will better support our students. Is there a gap that we created this year? Absolutely.
And that gap's going into first grade.
Correct.
But if we ask for $3 million more to make up for that gap, we were gonna get it anyway, so.
No, but I think Jess has a good point. Are we making sure that we're not just pushing the problem up a grade and not dealing with it, and then we're gonna have to deal with it next year?
Right.
So the whole plan, I mean, when we're talking about K into grade 1, those K teachers have been going under a lot of professional development. There's going to be structure changes to the curriculum leader position next year, where Laura is going back into the classroom. We're going to post that job. I'm really hoping that it is a curriculum leader / literacy director. Because a lot of the focus has to be back down at elementary. So some of that work's happening with professional development right now. And that support needs to continue to the first grade teachers next year. It's K1 that's under a lot of PD this year. So I do believe that it is with a lot of hands on deck. And it's not only just throwing a position at a problem, right? Some of it is correcting the problem that already exists here. And I think we're doing a really good job with that. And it just needs to be, and the right to read grant that we're getting, and more professional development time for teachers. We even have money in that budget to have teachers come in on a Saturday at their per diem rate so that they can get some more professional growth. It's all about growing that classroom experience so that we catch more kids in the classroom, and then have the remedial services don't need to be as grand. So I think we are doing a good job, but at the middle level, I will say that that's years of that happening. And so now they're at the middle level, and we need to address that. And that's why those grant funded positions will be key. And, I might have to shift things around within the Alliance grant to make that work, but that's a priority.
Steve, did you finish all your points?
Yep. Delegate, don't forget the spelling.
Yeah.
I have them all, Steve.
I guess, if I may, one
Okay.
point on that, your professional development line item, right, so we were looking at right on 359.
Yes.
Is increase, right, is that enough? It's pretty good increase, but is that compensating for some of the activities and programs the teachers have been asking for? That weren't able to be given, or any of those activities, or does that not, does that just cover what you deem they need?
So that's a long-winded question. However, we have a professional development committee that directs PD that's happening in the district. That PD is monitored by the folks at SDE because we are an alliance and opportunity district. So they watch what we're doing with professional development. So that amount of money that's in my line under curriculum umbrella is one pot of money. Then there's a pot of money specifically for professional development in Title II. There's a pot of money in Alliance for professional development. There's a pot of money in the Right to Read, which is a new grant, of money there. So I daisy chain all of those grant funding sources to put together the professional development plan that we use in the district. Some of our PD is organic from the experts that we currently have within us. So some of it doesn't have a price tag to it because we already have those experts in-house. So there is a plan and it has to align with our improvement plan with the state. So I'm lucky enough to be able to use those different pots of funds to make sure that that PD line is robust enough to cover the PD needs of the district. Would I love to have a ton more? Of course, but so far we've been doing a good job with what we've been given.
If I added back that 100,000, like just down and dirty, brings us up to about 5.2% increase. Somewhere in the vicinity of a 1.38 mil. I'm not sure on the mil. And I could be wrong. I'm doing it on my phone. So that's something we need to discuss next week. And we can always go back to the town for more money, but I hate to start off in the hole. My opinion. Any more comments? Because then I'm going to call for a motion to adjourn.
I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay, next week.